Let's go to work, 'cause I'm tripping. Gotta work on myself, 'cause I'm falling apart. Please wake me up, 'cause I'm slipping. Can't fight this feeling off no more. But I'm not going to give up and fall. Rise above it all, meet all my challenges and search for my strength. I defeat them all, I'm never ever gonna hide no more. I come to love myself again, yeah. For all the things I didn't know, the pain, the hurt, I let it go. Start to believe in myself and life will be sweet again, so sweet again. Above it all, meet all my challenges and search for my strength. I defeat them all, I never ever gonna hide no more. I come to love myself again. For all the things I didn't know, the pain, the hurt, I let it go, let it go. And I start to believe in myself, and life will be sweet again.
Testing. 1, a 2, a 3. Good morning. Hello. Welcome to Monday, September 16th, 2024. I am James True. I am live, and you're here with me, and that's pretty amazing. I haven't told you anything you don't know yet. Wow. Welcome to today's show. We are talking about black hole sun. What is that? It's kind of play on words, right? Black hole sun, won't you come? Black hole sun, won't you come? So let's get that out of her. Let's shake it out. Let's get it out. Black hole sun, won't you come? Black hole sun, won't you come? Okay, are you done? We good? We good? I just lost like half the audience, didn't I? That's all right. It was a test. It was a test, and I knew that you would stay. Black hole sun, right? Think about the idea of the child, not the sun, but the black hole child, right? That's the little play on words today. Quick little mic test. Everything should be good. There's like a level difference before when I switched from here till presentation, and that should be gone now. So, but yeah, thank you for being here. Really excited to share with you some mysteries today. Some of you are like, well, James, aren't you going to ruin it? I mean, if you're going to share mysteries, kind of spoils it. It's kind of like, hey, you want to, man, that's horrible what I was getting ready to say. Yeah, so, black hole sun, the idea of, we're going to talk about melanin today. A lot to talk about. And it's good to see you guys. We're going to be learning about black bodies. And we'll start with there. The perfect black body is an object that absorbs all of the radiation incident on it. A black body does not reflect or transmit any radiation, since a good absorber is also a good emitter. A perfect black body would be the best possible emitter. Now, this concept is pretty cool. The idea is that light comes in through a slit, here represented by O, and because of the shape of the receptor, it doesn't allow it to escape again. This is sort of an anti-laser, right? You guys know how lasers work, probably. Some of you may not. That's okay. So a laser is basically the opposite of this. It's emitting light, but only in a very specific way. And so a black body is an anti-laser. You could look at it like that. It's an anti-laser. Last time we covered a lot. We've covered a lot. If you're new here, there's a series that we've been doing called The Tower of Babel. And this is probably episode 6. I'm almost positive it's episode 6. And we're talking about why Noah was an albino. So I don't think you need to stop what you're doing and catch up. Just want you to know that this is kind of fits into a larger piece. And one of the things I wanted to kind of point out is that Noah was considered the first boat builder. At the end of last time's show, we briefly told you about Dr. Sorsby. In 1958, wrote this article for the medical journal. He's an ophthalmologist and was kind of like, hey, you know what? Noah's probably an albino. And, that's not like necessarily new, but it was kind of cool to see someone applying science to it. And the reason why I'm bringing up the builder boat group, Moses was part of the boat builder group, Bilderberger group. They were basically going to like flood the world. It's like a giant underwater 9/11. Noah's basically a patriarchal Rockefeller. It's sort of kind of like what happened. And the irony is he threw rocks over his shoulder to establish a new, I'm confusing you guys. That's Deucalion, but yeah, we had gotten to sort of this part. And basically, it's Dr. Sorsby had a few things to say, and we're going to be covering some of these things. I don't need you to read this now. I'm just telling you that we're sort of there's about 7 interesting things about Noah's condition, as reported by Lamech, his father, his mother, who claims she wasn't sleeping around. Lamech was kind of like, hey, I don't think this is my kid. And she's like, I swear it's my kid. And fellas, let's come over here for a second. Fellas, chicks say this all the time. And I honestly think that a long time ago, one chick said, I was immaculately concepted. Oh. And that the other guy on the other end of the table was sort of like, he thought about how hard it would be to accept that his beautiful wife, kind of got it on, maybe. Probably with a pagan, just kind of rubbing it in. And he was sort of like, okay, yeah, I think you were immaculately conceived. And then, of course, she comes out of the house. Mary's like, oh my God, I cannot believe that. Oh, and she's walking down the street, right? And, this word starts to spread. What is she going to do? She's like, yeah, she's in the market. She's like, yeah, she's grabbing peaches, put them in her bag, yeah, I was immaculately conceived. And the shopkeeper's like, yeah, So Mary, I've got some serious questions. And she could have used me. I could have helped her explain that all of this is legit. And Rome probably would have survived another 1,000 years. Just saying. Just saying. But we had to learn how to lie. We did. We had to learn how to lie. And as I pointed out before, the patriarchs did not actually have the frontal lobe that Noah's children did. And really, this was their downfall. It was, ironically, wiping out the olfactory and making the children of Noah lie like a bitch, really was the downfall of the giants. There's really no way that they could have survived because quite frankly, they lack the intellect. Maybe a better word is they lack the wetiko. They didn't live in this deceptive sort of realm. And there's a lot of stories about this, right? You know, Odysseus himself, right? He's on their way. They crash their boat. You know, they land on this poor innocent, and honestly, innocent Cyclops Island. Dude's minding his own business. He's like, look, I'm a Cyclops. People don't get me. I have no depth perception. I'm going to stay on this island. I'm going to grow my own food. I'm going to, live a nice, peaceful life. He probably writes in his journal a lot. Let's be honest. He probably grows a little cuckoo plant, right? Does a little cuckoo token, right? Cyclops token, Cyclops token, and all of a sudden these three-eyed guys crash. And the first thing they do is, what do? They eat half his flock. They eat a bunch of his sheep, right? Then they camp in his cave. He probably had a no trespassing sign. He probably did. He was a fucking Cyclops. He can make shit. So he probably had please respect my private property, And no, they went there. They ate his food. He was like, hey, I don't have friends. Can I hang out with you guys? And they're like, sure, man. Then they I think they stabbed him in the eye. I think they they're literally like, he has one eye. Let's fucking shove a stick in it. And those are the good guys. We're the fucking good guys in this picture. And I think that really does give you an idea what it's like to be a patriarch. If you read a lot of Talmudic thought, really explains that Adam was just, oh man, you think Cain was fucking gullible. You will not believe how gullible Adam was. First of all, there's the whole, oh, I didn't know, Eve tricked me. Oh, I've been tricked. Oh, and Cain, dude, why you got to be such a kiss ass to God? Why you get it. It's hard to look at the patriarchs, but it's important to understand they're like whiter than white. They're the whitest people and part of that's melanin. Another part of it's they're just being brand new. And because they're unpacked from the ark, keep in mind, for lawful carnal knowledge, the whole point, God is actually telling these Down syndrome giants, let's be honest, they're like, look, you're not going to make it. You are here to pound virgins, and then you're going to die. And most of them were like, I can do that. I will do that. It was only till we got to Ham, as you learned last time. Ham's sort of like, this is tough. Do I want to lie or do I want to live for 500 years? And Ham goes for the living 500 years. He's like, I don't want to live in a world of deceit. This is very Matrix. Holy shit, right? This is like the Matrix in biblical times. I have a lot to cover, James. You should probably get back to work. I see a lot of hearts, though, so it's kind of hard to stop. Good to see you guys. Hope everybody's doing great. Really appreciate you being here. So as I told you last time, though, remember how I told you about Noah being the boat builder? I just want to point out one more time that because he's the first boat builder, he was promised to bring relief to the Cyclops. And I really think that this fetal breathing at 10 weeks has something to do with that he was the first person to launch himself from the shores. As I've said before, I think that if you reread Genesis from the principle of a zygote, you'd see that it all makes sense. I mean, if you think watching Wizard of Oz with Pink Floyd is something special, spoiler alert, it's fucking not. But doing that with the Old Testament, it totally is. It's really amazing. Okay, some of you guys are like, man, that's not true. I really noticed some things, and I'm sorry. I remember that day, my friends were all excited. I wanted to be excited. I wasn't at the point where I was like, oh, I'm too sophisticated to be excited. I was in that mode of, please like me, please like me. And my fucking autistic self, I'm just like being honest. I'm just like, kind of how I felt with Chariots of Fire. I'm like, look, music was good, but fuck, man. Just looks like a bunch of gay men running around the beach to me. And Mr. Kessler was disappointed. He was like, James, I took you to this. This is like NPR kind of movie, you know? This is the kind of movie you'd hear. This week on NPR, we discuss Chariots of Fire and the stunning archetypal implications of homosexual men running down the beach. And it's you know, I think you should make movies about homosexuals. I have zero beef with that. But if you're going to ask me as a 12-year-old, like, am I moved by this? I'm going to be like, no, there's no horses, A. So, what the fuck, right? Like, why are there not enough horses? Whores or horses, really? I mean, the whole movie was just missing the whole hors d'oeuvres, the entire hors d'oeuvres thing, right? Horseradish, horses, horse, the whole shebang. This show's over. You should go. If you think, oh, we're gonna bust out some melanin studies here, you are fucked, my friend. You are fucked. Oh man. So, yeah. So I do want to actually pretend like we're gonna actually get to it. I explained to you, very, very important, that when you clone a horse, one of the biggest problems with cloning a horse is the horse actually has the memories of the parental donor, of the the oocyte inherits the epigenetic memories. This is such a big deal because when you start to read about, for example, Noah, it says, and now my father hear me. For to my son Lamech a child has been born, who resembles not him, and whose nature is not the nature of man. His color is whiter than snow. He is redder than a rose. His hair of his head is whiter than white wool. His eyes are like the rays of the sun. And when he opened them, he illuminates the whole house. And then this is the one that's pertaining to this slide specifically. When also he was taken from the hand of the midwife, he opened his mouth and blessed the Lord of heaven. Noah, if I say Moses, I mean Noah. Noah had complete faculties of speech. All of his speech faculties were solid. He could speak completely. And when a horse is cloned, unfortunately, its gender is already known. It has the epigenetic puberty stamps as if it passed through the country of puberty, even though it was just born. And if you start to think about, if you're going to pack a genetic seed, kind of have to sort of condense the last 5 episodes here real quick, but you take Noah, he's the outer shell, he's the hermaphroditic outer husk, and inside of him is hidden a seed that's placed into a preserver. A chimeric ark is Noah, a genetic chimeric ark. And so the seed of Adam is hidden from the sun because as soon as the sun hits it, it starts to activate it. It starts to give it memories. Epigenetic memories are embedded into the seed. So you need a chimeric outer shell like Noah to enclose that seed so it never actually transcripts or replicates. It's simply waiting until the situation is right to do that. And I believe that the 2 frontal lobe tumors that brought us into Homo sapiens sapien was, in fact, the delicate nature of that Enochian seed opened up into the earth and the population allowed to bloom from a hermaphroditic outer shell. And we have the mythology, I'm calling it mythology, of a series of generations that were, the sole purpose was to carnally knowledge each other, to carnally know each other, to carnally see each other. And that pounding of the patriarchs, that bump and grind over centuries and centuries, every generation they had a new seed came out, and that seed was closer to the Enochian atom, the actual goal human that you're trying to unwrap. So it's decompressed over time. And so the Cyclops is that primordial atom. I've said that it probably has 22 chromosomes, and that fertility was invented from that 22 chromosome hermaphroditic seed through the SRY chromosome, the 23rd chromosome, which has special markers specifically for sex. I'm sorry I'm repeating the last 5 shows, but it's just, this is crucial to understand. It's a light switch. You turn sex on or off. And so all these memories, all the stories that you're hearing about Noah really do seem to genetically line up. This guy clones horses, and he said, I finally decided human cloning would not be a good thing because I think that cellular memory actually exists. This is Dr. Meeker. Can you imagine having a baby, he says, that is born with memories of extreme happiness or extreme sadness? I think what you may do is have a child that is born insane because it cannot process what's up there in its head. It's seeing things that it experienced, but as a different person. It's a different mode, right? It's very, very different. My heater accidentally kicked on. I'm going to take 30 seconds here and go turn it off. I hope you'll stay with me. Just going to do this. Be right back. And we're back. So the if you think about Noah in this way, every time that a new generation is born, you're storing new information into the genes. And those genes, I believe, start to color you. Turquoise works the same way. When turquoise is first when you first pull turquoise out of the ground, it has a certain color, and then it starts to oxidize. The metals in the air start to interact, and that interaction ends up colorizing, changing it in a way. And that interaction is the processing of information.
Melanin is a versatile molecule. Not only is it responsible for giving us our UV-blocking complexion, at the cellular level, it gobbles up harmful radicals that lead to diseases such as cancer and Parkinson's. But that's only the beginning. Over the past decades, researchers have focused on what might be melanin's most promising talent yet discovered: the ability to conduct electricity. That's important, because if we fancy a future where environmentally benign electronics help us fight disease, monitor our health, and store energy, we're going to need bio-friendly materials. And what better material for the job than one made right in-house? This is melanin in its most common form. When it comes to electrical charge, melanin acts as a sort of bank, always ready to lend out or take electrons depending on the environment. Chained together, as they naturally tend to do, melanin molecules can shuffle electrons and surrounding ions end to end. The result is an all-natural electrode material. In terms of performance, it's not on par with the electronic materials we find in our phones and laptops. But because melanin is 100% compatible with our body's makeup, it's a much safer starting material for building electronic devices, both for us and the environment.
I'm sorry, I'm going to get this right sometime. Melanin is just like the black body I showed you. The shape itself is only going to allow certain information in to a very small slither. And that information, once it comes in, it's not coming out. And because it's not coming out, you yourself do not have to absorb that information. Notice I'm calling sunlight information. You're at the beach. You're getting too much information. You're getting so much. I'm not muted now. Okay, yeah. You're getting so much information that your cells, your filament starts to burn. It starts to turn red. As it starts to turn red, you begin to, your melanocytes are overworking. They're trying to swallow the sun. They're trying to swallow it as much as they can. There's only so much they can swallow. You end up getting burned because of your inability to drink sunlight. It's true. To actually digest sunlight. And I talk about melanin all the time because it's also used in neuroinflammation, that, believe it or not, your brain inflames when you get too much sunlight. Except for sunlight, this is why I called it information. When your limbic body gets too much information, whether it be sunlight, whether it be the sound of a saber-toothed tiger with the drippings of saliva from its teeth, that you would be burned in the same way from that information as you would from being in the beach without a shirt on. And that the melanin is trying as much as it can to dampen the experience for you and keep you alive. This really is the heart of what the black sun is. A lot of people have different definitions of what they think the black sun is, and I'm not trying to take that away from anybody. But I want you to think about black sun at least in this way: is the black sun is the sun of exposure. You and I can look at the sun for a few seconds directly, at least in the middle of the day, say at noon, at the raw of sun. We can look directly at the sun, and then maybe for a few seconds we can stare directly at it, but then we have to stop. It starts to burn. And lower in the atmosphere during the dawn or sometimes at sunset, you have an opportunity to expose yourself to the sun longer. We call this sun gazing. And if you were to stretch the idea of sun gazing out over an entire year, you would discover an analemma. You would discover a figure eight in the sky that perpetually spins itself throughout the year. That if you take a picture at the same time, the sun will be in a different spot and create this figure eight. But you would only know this. This is the important part. You would only know this if you could expose yourself to the sun for an entire year. That the exposure of looking at something longer is giving you deeper information. This is really key, which is why you get sunburned. The information is too radiance. It has too much radiance. The information of raw is too much. It has too much potency in the UV spectrum, and that you are not capable of drinking that kind of energy. EMF is the same. And that as we are exposed to higher concentrations of energy, whether they be EMF waves, well, sunlight is an EMF wave. It's all the same thing, the exposure to information. I would argue that if someone was just to simply call you bad names all day long, but they were to whisper it, that you would suffer the same thing. The melanin would try and absorb every piece of information from that to protect you from knowing it, but that it would start to catch up and you would start to realize, hey, there's a voice that hates me in here. And so melanin helps you deny your way through the world. And if you didn't have this ability to deny things, you wouldn't be able to stare directly at the sun for a while, or stare directly at a predator even. It's a huge, huge superpower that Noah didn't have. no one in his family had. It was something that would come much later, after generations of carnal knowledge, after a bunch of unpacking that would first need to take place. So if we understand that the difference between a white sun and a black sun is exposure, we can also start to understand the difference between a moment and totality. That the reason why we call moments moments is because we can only remember so much of them, and we just decide to say this is a moment. You and I have a definition for a piece of cake, and it's roughly this big, kind of. And that piece is based on our definition. If we were much larger, the piece of cake would probably be larger. If we were much tinier, it would be tinier. So we decide that morsel,ing. And so too is a moment, simply an exposure, but inside the stratosphere of memory. So the white sun is to moment as black sun is to totality. And that if you could drink totality, you would call it a moment, but you can't. So what the fuck is a photon? I ask this because when we unpack quantum mechanics, I'm going to pretend that all of us agree with quantum mechanics right now. When we unpack the double slit experiment, something really important happens. We notice at what point do we measure it as a particle or a wave. And that point is actually when it's witnessed. Hear me out, because when you hear witness, you might think when a person sees it. But we've actually proven that other matter can witness things. And that we can have a delayed reveal. We can have a reveal that throws itself away. We can have a reveal that reveals itself before we even pick if it's thrown. It's all kinds of crazy stuff that we've done with this double slit experiment. But what it comes down to is the idea is that matter itself can witness itself inside this world. Quantum mechanics says that's possible. And I tend to believe it because there's a fascinating phenomenon. If you and I were to take a wire of copper, and all the molecules in that wire of copper were separated in a random way, as any group of molecules might be found through an amalgamated piece of metal that's been stretched through a machine, that there's going to be certain variations in thickness. And that all the variations in all the molecules and how many times it's been bent, how many times it's been compressed, all that adds up to the amount of time it takes for you to begin a signal at one side and for you to end a signal at another side. And that even through quantum computers, we start to think about, can we predict how long it would take for the electron to start at the beginning of the wire and get to the end? And the answer really is no. Yeah, we can definitely predict how long it's supposed to take. And we can measure the amount of molecules, and what we're saying is the perfect wire, and it's a hypothetical, right? There's a hypothetical wire that has a hypothetical packing, and we know it has this many. But we don't actually have a computer powerful enough to detect a real world example of that. It's always off a little. There's only one way to do it. And that's to build a world just like our own and just measure it. And wouldn't you know, convenient as fuck, we have one. It just so happens that we actually have the one supercomputer that we need. That we are surrounded right now in real time by that very supercomputer that would actually be able to detect how long it would take for the electrons to begin at the wire and to reach the end of the wire. And it's because we have a real world functioning example of that, and we can just go up to the wire and test, and we can measure it, and we can see. And it's consistent, and we can learn from this. So it shows you that the only way that we can know as much as we know, in other words, the only way we can have a supercomputer that's capable of detecting such intricate things would be if we were living inside one, and we are. And I think at the heart of this comes down to what witness truly is. Every photon that you see is a state of witness. and you can't avoid it. If the photon hits you, it means that you have to collapse your wave. Every time a photon hits you, it's like a game of dodgeball where the potential of everything that could possibly be is frozen, and it has no choice but to collapse its wave, because the photon itself is capable of witnessing its own environment. This is according to quantum mechanics. Now take this and stretch it out so that the photon is to a moment what totality is to God, and you start to see that God is a giant witness engine. God is someone who's capable of witnessing all things in a timely temporal fashion. It's like a shore, and it moves through time. And every moment it gets to another place, it witnesses every single transaction that's on its tracks right then. And it collapses the wave. All of potentiality is on the left, and all of what was measured is on the right. And so everyone who has faith is capable of living inside a giant sweeping witness machine that is rendering their faith's results for them in a fair way. Kind of sounds like I'm off topic, but I'm not, because I want you to picture that if you could witness these things in totality, you basically would be a God. And that you and I use melanin to hide this sunburn, this bright light, but God wouldn't need to do that. And that one of the special things about Noah, Lamech was told, Lamech said, my son thinks that his wife cheated on him. Methuselah, what do I do? My son thinks that his wife cheated on him. Methuselah's his father. Methuselah's like, my grandson Noah would not cheat on his wife. No. That kid is weird looking, totally, but he's necessary. He needs to look weird. He needs to look weird because he cannot have any melanin. He can't have it. Noah's not allowed to look away. Noah is strapped to the front of Mad Max's car, and he's pouring down reality in real time, and there's nothing he can do. He cannot hide it. He can't do it. There's nothing he can do about it. This is necessary for him to get us where we need to go. And so you have this ultra-lit person that basically is the most schizophrenic, shamanistic thing you could ever picture. And is the only link. He's the only person that linked us over into this new thing. Keep in mind, I really believe in the oracle mythology, and that a lot of this more has to do with the zygote. But I think that you can zoom out of the mythology and come back to giants and have the same conversation about the zygote, because you're looking at meiosis, i.e. the giants before Noah is meiosis, and then mitosis, the process after. So when I jump back and forth, I want you to know you're allowed to do that. That the oracle mythology gives you the ability to do that, and it's all still straight. Denial is a river in the spine. It's you have two compartments inside your substantia niagara, and these two compartments have two little slits. One is called pars compacta. It has these black receptors, and the other has pars reticulata, and it has these white receptors. And that this literally is the gas and the brakes. And that if you start to sense too much reality, you secrete more melanin into your system to drink up what is happening to you. And they come out of this pars compacta. They come out of the pars reticula, So you're constantly using this throttle, this gas brake, to make yourself through the world. And that you're not the only person. That melanin is built into pretty much every base form of life that has some kind of limbic input. Most of the time, though, it's much more simple how melanin is. But it's such a core element that organic chemists have discovered that if we found cephalopods, squids, that have ink sacs in them, that still the melanin is still good. Like, it's still good, and it's chemically the same. After 160 million years, it's still the same. What does that mean? This is a very basic building block that's been here a while. Melanin is not a new invention. And that this ability to absorb, just like you saw in the video, the ability for it to become an electronic circuit is crucial. It's crucial because we are electric beings. And only recently have we discovered that. When I grew up, they were saying the heart is a pump. was hearsay to start to suggest things like an electric. It still is. It still is to try and describe things electrically. As I said before, denial is just a form of neural inflammation. And the neural melanin is just simply this dark pigment. I've warned you guys before about not giving your PIN number to toothed whales because they have the exact same lying mechanisms as we do. That melanin is found in most creatures. However, there's a particular part where melanin is actually used in the thought process itself. And that is the neuroinflammation that toothed whales have too. And so if you give a dolphin a PIN number, I think you're taking your chances. Another important part of this, though, that I want you to realize is this last line. Its accumulation takes place over the entire lifespan and appears to contain the story of one's life's exposure to several endogenous and environmental metals and/or compounds. If you think about mercury as being the medicine, that the messenger of the medicine, that metals are here to inform you that over life, the reason why we keep getting stabbed with metal, right? Whether it be a halberd or a longsword or a dagger or an arrow or a syringe, that all of these things are teaching us. The metal is teaching us. And as we fail to learn the lessons of the metal, our skin becomes tarnished because the melanin had to absorb the metals for us. And this really is at the heart of why our skin is colored a certain way. If you were born directly underneath the sun, let's say in Africa, the amount of information you required to drink from the sun is a lot. Like a lot. You wake up, it's like, here, take this message from me, says Ra. Take a note. Dictate this message. And you're writing as fast as you can, but you can't keep up. So the melanin in your skin gets so thick that epigenetically, it just has to pass that down. Generationally, it starts to pass that down. But this is absorbed power. This is true power. That every mole that you have in your body is a powerhouse. It's a powerhouse because it's something that you probably had trouble accepting a long time ago and you stored it in your skin. And I'm calling it power, even though a lot of us would call it, oh, that's more like a tumor or melanoma. And that would be what unwitnessed power would look like. Unwitnessed power would look like a tumor enraging itself. And we declare war on these tumors. The medicine gives it witness. What is a tumor? It's a desperate cry for witness. Electrically, I believe that I'm my own separate clump of ions. I've disassociated from my outer being because I don't feel seen, says the tumor. Meanwhile, the rest of the body has moved itself and separated itself from that disassociated state because no one ever looks at this guy, so it must not be us. And over time, you end up with a tumor that feels it's not a part of something because it's never been seen. And what do? You run to a doctor. And what does the doctor do? He sees it. He sees it more than you've ever seen it before. He takes pictures of it. He uses magnetics. He uses electrons. He uses chemicals. He uses blood tests. He takes x-rays. He takes every fucking picture of that thing he possibly can. Are you witnessing that? Or is he finding it so he can dispel it? It could be that this is a vital part of our holographic medicine that we lack, is this inability to witness something versus eradicate. Our goal is to eradicate, and maybe that the eradication is what causes so much problems when in fact it's more witnessing involved. Scary stuff, right? Like, it's scary. You're like, James, why are you telling me to witness melanoma? It's like, I'm telling you that because when you start to unwrap the ion channels, the positivity of the body, the charge of the body itself, it just seems to make more sense. That's why. You know, I get it. This is probably even the greatest topic you want to hear about. Someone with albinism is going to have this lazy eye, strabismus. They're going to have this back and forth movement sometimes called nystagmus. Pedigree study that 5 members of a family across 2 generations of albinism also suffer from schizophrenia. You also have a much higher form of Parkinson's. All of these things, believe it or not, are directly related to this little spot right here. Right there. In Parkinson's, this will be Schrank. Schizophrenia, what's happening is that the body is, for whatever reason, lost the ability to hide. The denial button doesn't work. There's no break. And when there's no break, you end up burning out your limbic receptors. And you end up with some horrible eye problems, honestly. I've said this before, we'll go over it quick, but is schizophrenia a social disease? Because according to albinism, it probably is. It's a social disease. And that's why when you prescribe haloperidol, a first-generational antipsychotic, is commonly used to block dopamine. It's blocking dopamine because it's trying to regulate what you see. Less dopamine means less reality. If a drug can make you sense less reality, if a drug can inhibit your dopamine, you will sense less reality. If you were an albino and you were sensing too much reality, if you have schizophrenia, you were definitely sensing too much reality. And that this, it doesn't give you a brake pedal, it simply cuts the gas pedal off. That it's fucking with your dopamine flow, is trying to limit that because it has no control over the brake. I think the reason why there are so many social barriers, schizophrenia is a social cognition problem. It's a social barrier problem. It's a social exclusion problem. And that the symptoms that we call the symptoms of schizophrenia, hallucinations and delusions, that's what we call them. But we call them that because we all agree with our hallucinations. All of us agree with each other's hallucinations. And if you were to have one hallucination that I wasn't to have, you and I would be competing and we wouldn't feel as good with each other because we'd be looking for a network to reaffirm our reality for us. And that if we multiplied that by 30, one of us would have to be crazy. And the person that would be crazy would probably be the one that lost the vote. The majority rule of what sanity is really the only thing that we dictate today is for what it means. Neuromelanin is a miracle. It is the chemical equivalent of this ability to swallow trauma. The German word new means new. The noun row, an artificial language for international use that rejects all existing words and is based instead on an abstract analysis of ideas. That's row. Mela, forms relating to black, and nin, the numerology 9, neuromelanin. The blackness of 9 is in the ancient of Kemet. This stuff is, astrophysicists think that if there's something called dark matter in the universe, it's probably melanin, that it has the same properties. And if you buy into the Osirian model of the world that I talk about, that you're a cursor living inside your own body. And yeah, cursor, because you're like, damn it, God, all that stuff. But you move around your own body as you move around the continent. And that every time you see someone else, you're just seeing another cell in the body. And that we're connected through ion channels. Those ion channels are our genetic code. It's like a general IP address. And your best friends are just your local area network, right? People that you ion channel a lot. And when you ion channel them enough, you grow strength, you feel more confident, you go work at a job. It's probably the organ that you're living in. And that the only way that we could have a close network to where all of us would have a fractal consciousness would be inside of an Osiris model like this. And this is the exact same model that a prokaryote and a eukaryotic cell has. Remember, the prokaryote is homeless. It doesn't have a house. But you and I, we've been doing this a while. We're eukaryotic. That not only did we start to bring in our own bacteria and use it as furniture in our house, but that our house grew into multiple houses, multiple cellular houses living inside a conglomerate that we call us. It's got organs. It's got roadways. It's got infrastructure. You're a fucking Gaddafi. You're like, fuck America. I am. And that's really what's happening, that all of us are these living gods. Only some of us want to accept it. Only some of us are willing to say, yeah, that's probably true. Remember I told you that the first preserver was the rays of Shamash. It was stopping the rays of Shamash from getting in. That the rays of Shamash would actually be something that would ruin the DNA. If you were preserving the DNA and you didn't want it to be witnessed. Remember, sunlight, the photons are witnessing it. The second it witnessed something, all the atmosphere that has entered into that or gone into that is starting to stain the marble of man. The Enochian seed is white alabaster, pristine. And that the second that it's exposed, it starts to tarnish, which is why it's placed inside of a preserver. He hid himself in an ark, sheltered himself with a luminous cloud, because darkness was falling over everything upon the earth. Those without strabismus, do you see both pupils? Those without who? So strabismus is basically the wandering eyes. This is a question from chat. Super chat, by the way. Thank you, Draconian Method. And those without strabismus, do you see both pupils? I don't quite understand what that means, but the my theory on why the eyes, if you could not slow reality down, if your eyes were to constantly flicker, or if one eye was to look this way but the other eye was to look that way, your depth perception would be fucked and you would not be fully immersed in experiencing the world. So I think the reason why so much albinism is ocular is because the person is trying to blur the world because they don't have melanin to do it. Same with schizophrenia. They're trying to blur the world. And one way of doing that is to constantly move your head. It's like a pigeon response. And what is Parkinson's? This is why I really feel this is what it is, because it's a low budget trick to try and make reality seem discombobulated. And it makes sense because if your environment's moving, you're going to have to wait until your environment stops moving so that you can drink it through your black sun. Remember, black sun is exposure. This is why I started out with that. White sun, one look, one look, one look, one look, one look. Gloria Vanderbilt, white sun, white sun, white sun, white sun, white sun, white sun, white sun. As soon as she holds her look, she goes dark. I am the fucking Black Queen Mother. I will fucking cause my son to jump off the 14th-story balcony by reading a story. It's like, when you start to tap in, this is why I think all of her art is so eclectic like that. She cannot rest. You cannot rest. And you can't rest probably because your appetite is either been too enlarged over time and now you're living a really boring life. I think this is one way. And the other way is the opposite of that, which is that you're having some kind of genetic issue, which is stopping you from applying a brake. And this is the result. Not just this is the result, but this is the result after multi-generations, which means any kind of trauma, man. Being trapped underneath a fucking rock as you're like wandering through the Grand Canyon, right? And you're there for like 3 months. That's probably going to be a mole on your body that's here thousands of years later. And I'm telling you this in a constructive way because I really do think that those are gifts that you've left for yourself. You buried those gifts for you. And a lot of people survive cancer because they wanted an experience where they're forced to witness old trauma in a very specific way. And they make it. Quite frankly, they make it. Some people don't, some people do. Some people don't want to make it. I don't even think it's a matter of resilience. I think we don't fully understand why we're here. A lot of us just think death is a mistake. It's like, who's the guy that lived the whole time that you guys keep comparing this to? Because it's death is not a mistake. It's the finish line, right? Promethea is a pretty famous cloned horse. It's technically difficult procedure. A lot of equipment involved. Research experiment with 841 reconstructed eggs. Of these, 22 grew into a transferable embryo. And of the 22, 17 embryos transferred to a recipient mare. And this is the only one they got. And when you want to know why that the other doctor was against human cloning, it's because then there's a lot of abortion. If you believe in abortion, there's a lot of abortion. It's a lot. Especially when it's memories that are already there. If you think about it, Promethea never got to die. Promethea doesn't get to die. Promethea doesn't get to clear her plate. Her plate is still going. So not only have you been resuscitated after you tried to run for the light, but you've been placed into a baby's body. And now you're trying to tell everybody who you are, but you can't. Because everyone's like, oh, look how cute he is. Oh, he can't talk because he doesn't know how to work his tongue yet. Hey, let's circumcise him. That'll show him. And then that's the world we live in, that we wouldn't know what's happening anyway. that the genetic language that we're born with could be very, very comprehensible through compassion, through empathy, through all kinds of things like that. But we're just not ready yet. We're not ready yet. On the right here, I've just shown you that the skull tends to bleach in the sunlight. And I think that's very fitting because if you think about who we truly are, we begin as this alabaster, clean thing. And then again, as we drink the metals in the air, it colors us. Same thing happens with turquoise. It's the same process. This is actually why we're here. If you think about it, we're here to drink and to not drink certain things. And what we don't drink is going to show us who and what we are. This is Fairy's Black Box. As I showed you before, this one's just called Fairy's Black Box. It consists of a hollow, double-walled hollow sphere, blackened inside with a small hole in its surface. And using metal and incident radiation and black lamps and evacuated space with a vacuum and conical projections, you end up with basically something that absorbs light from every single angle. There's simply no other way to see it. And that this is new technology for us, that we used to not even be able to really measure this stuff. And now we can actually create the kind of shape that would pull light in and not let it out. We have blackout paint now, which does the same thing. The structure of it is meant to absorb everything. This is how peacock feathers work, by the way. The luminescence that you see from a peacock feather is escape light that is flying around a tube. And that tube keeps it spinning and spinning and spinning. The photon is never allowed to absorb into the keratin until it finally lets itself out in a very specific spectrum in a very certain way, and that's the peacock's eye. All that's through melanin. Your eyes are a certain color because there's certain light that you're like, I can't handle this light, man. I can't handle this light. And you reject that. You reject that light. And so green eyes is the rejection of green. Blue eyes is the rejection of blue. Although if you start to understand that blue is hallucinated color, it's really, blue eyes are almost like the acceptance of all things except for hallucination. It's kind of scary when you start to even think about what these things mean. As a black body, you as a human are a black body. Not just your skin. Every single part of you is a black body. The human body is considered to be 97% perfect black body. That's a lot. You're more black body than silver, copper, gold, aluminum foil, wood, asphalt, corn, watermelons. And the only thing beats you is black paint. And this is subsurface scattering. There's a slide on the screen which is showing you the illumination of the skin. One of the hardest things to do in 3D is to build in the concept of subsurface scattering, because now you start to have to take into account volume itself. And that when you understand what you are, 97% of you is absorbing light. You're a black body. And the only reason why any of us see you is because of the light that you absorbed. You could say it's also what we reflect, but keep in mind that when you absorb light, some of that light comes out. We're just not ready to see it yet. Now, I've told you how much that the eyes themselves have grown, that they've consciously grown. But here's another point about Noah. After a time, my son Methuselah took a wife for his son Lamech. She became pregnant by him, brought forth a child, the flesh of which was white as snow and red as a rose, the hair of whose head was white like wool and long, who was born with long hair, whose eyes were beautiful, and he opened them, he illuminated all the house like the sun. The whole house abounded with light. It abounded with light. So literally you would picture that there's a baby, like a baby light, and that the baby itself is emanating light. And that you might be, well, that's impossible, but it's really not. We've gone over this before. Here's another way of bringing it to you, though. The Greek Argos, literally called the bright one. The Argos, the ark itself, the constellation is called Argos for the ark. It's a giant ship. And that the word Argos means the bright one. And that the brightness is more having to do with power. We used to sense power more than we sense visuals. We still do sense power. We just call them visuals. That the entire time we've been sensing power. We just call it light. And I can prove this. I'm not making this up. There's this concept called Malamu and Pulutu. And that these would be the wings and the horns on you that the horns on your head would be this Malamu, and the wings that you have as a result of the shoulders, the aura of your shoulders, is a Pultu. And that we used to see this. We used to see the glimmering and shimmering of people that terrified us. This was, another word for this was Malam. The effect that seeing a deity's Malam has on the human is described as Ni, a word for the physical creeping of the flesh. And so we have people like Noah and Moses in this case that actually have horns throughout history, and that there's actually a lot to that, that the original solar disk of Samaria is actually showing you the aura. This is an aura of a king. This is the Khan's aura. And so the one who's the most powerful, the one with the most charisma, this was what they would see. You would see this around them. And I believe that this is a huge clue about what they meant when they saw that Noah was glowing. I do think he was glowing. I think that our eyes work differently then, that we slowly were learning how to read different colors. And that this is just showing you the proof of that. It's just taken us a while to realize that that's how much we've changed. Keep in mind that plants are every color except for green. Which means life is rejecting green. All of plant life is rejecting the color green. It has everything else. It's just a different way of thinking about it if you think about that it's reflecting green. All of our stars are going to fall within a certain spectrum of 12,000 Kelvin to like 1,000 Kelvin. And the reason why is because they're rejecting certain colors. And when we study what colors they reject, like the blue star spica, it's rejecting these hues of light, that purplish, bluish hue of light. It's saying, I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm not that. And isn't that who we are? It's a collection of who we're not. Technically, a name, you could look at what the definition of name is. It means every name that I'm not. This would be the one definition of it. Because it doesn't really tell you who you are. It just tells you who you are in comparison to everything else. A lot of people don't like this slide. I mean, it's a new slide, so, But what I mean is that a lot of people aren't going to like this. But black light matters. Not because of Black Lives Matter, but because of dark matter. A lot of people don't like to talk about dark matter. But it's true. The light we see 15% of what we see. That when we start to measure the weight of the world, of everything that we see, there's definitely looks like there's something else not there. And that this sounds like melanin to me. That your Osiris body is ignoring 85% of information that's around you. 85% of it is dark matter inside of this Pac-Man here. And that you are comfortable enough seeing 15%. And that the only reason that's stopping you from having to see all of it is the melanin in your skin, in your ears, in your eyes, in your retinal walls, in the cochlea of your ears, inside your pores, as you're about to find out. And this isn't symbolic. Look at the left. The left is a non-polarized picture. The right is a polarized picture. It's the same place. One you can see through the water, one you can't. Do you know what's different? Well, the light's polarized. No, if you think about it, the light's still the same. What's different is that you understand which light is polarized, and you're choosing to what? To melanate it. You're ignoring it. And when you ignore the light, you see through the water. So when you first looked at water for the very first time, it looked white. It looked shimmery. This is what everyone says. Homer wrote a giant poem. It's all it was a poem about a boat on the water under the sky. And he never uses the word blue. Instead, he calls it shimmering. It's shimmering. It's shimmering. And it's non-polarized. It's non-polarized. Everything was non-polarized. Over time, we have learned to ignore the electrons that are polarized. We've learned to discern through the aura that used to terrify us when we'd see another creature, which is probably the smell. The archaic Cyclops has the full olfactory glands, the top of his mouth, that's fully intact. And so he would have to find a way to render what he's smelling in the room. And he would render this through Malamu, through this kind of non-lying to himself. Non-lying to himself. that as we got, let's try to figure out where that slide was. As we got better at lying to ourselves, we actually got better at lying. This technically, to see this polarized, we have to lie and not see the non-polarized light. So we're seeing less is more, less is more, less is more. This really goes into the study of Hades, which I won't go into now, but if you want to read my book, Black Eye Club, it really covers this well. But the order of words in which ancient colors were understood were first thing we do is we could figure out what the difference between black and white was. And this is in our literature, we know this. Like every ancient language has this order. Then we learned how to distinguish red, and we start to talk about red. Then we start to talk about green. Then we start to talk about yellow. Then we start to talk about blue. And it's funny because as you go down into the ocean deeper and deeper, you lose these colors in reverse. That you don't see red anymore at the bottom of the ocean. You can't see it. And this is really more to do with the nature of our reality. We're hallucinating that it's an ocean. I don't mind you calling it an ocean, but if you think about it, it's a place that we cannot fathom all that we see. Most of the dark matter is probably going to be there. Probably going to be in that place where we just refuse to admit it's there, which means a giant Cthulhu could swim underneath you and you wouldn't know it because you didn't have the comfort to absorb that kind of information. And I think if you go back to, there's at least 60 instances. Ironically, I think it's like 66, but there's like 66 instances where Jesus refers to, don't quote me on that 66, but is quoted as being a necromancer, seeing demons. And that I think you're looking at a melanin-free life, that Jesus had such a clean coat of many colors. His aura was so clean because he didn't have fear. He didn't feel the world was broken. And he's able to like see through and see all the colors of all things at once. And so he spoke about the demons that occupy people because he was seeing their aura. The guy that's begging at the well, right? Somehow a blind man has made it right to the edge of the well, but then needs help. So he's spending all day begging. Oh, please, if I could only find a well. And people were like, here, let me give you some water. He's like, oh, but I need money. And it's Jesus saw him. He saw him and said, hey, dude, you're lying. You know where the well is. It's right here. But Jesus knew that he couldn't own it by saying you're lying. They couldn't handle that. So what does he do? He heals him. He heals him. And he tricks him. He goes, would you like to be not blind? Yes, I would. Okay. Boom. Here's mud in your eye. And that too would be just the breaking down of the fieldings, the realization that you're living in victimhood is a biggie, right? The victimhood is melanin. Victimhood is neuromelanin coursing through your head, squeezing out the brakes, saying, I don't want to own this. I don't want to own this. How do I give away my power? How do I give away my power? And people are like, hey, you can pay 40% of your life force. You can give to the government. We're like, oh, this is great. And even that is a form of neuromelanin. Even that is a form of denial that allows us to feel more comfortable as we're trying to slip through these things. The human body emits biophotons. They're 1,000 times less intense than the human eye can detect, but here they are. And that they peak throughout the day around 4 p.m. That's your maximum peakage of biophotons are coming out. And yeah, this guy, they strapped him in a chair every day, every couple of hours. And they put him in this super dark room, and they took a photon camera, and they started to take a picture of all the photons that were coming out of him. And this is what it looked like. It's mostly around the lower jaw, his chakra. His gland. His gland was emitting these photons. And when we start to understand the difference between me and you, one of the biggest differences between giants, between Noah and you, believe it or not, is you got light holes. You got pores. A lot of people don't know this. If you want to read a book, I recommend the book Born to Run. It's going to tell you all about this. Christopher McDougall, I think that's his name. McDonald or McDougall or something. Born to Run. And archaeologically, it's been discovered that, the Achilles heel, it's like a big deal, but it wasn't the only big deal. The ability for us to massively lose heat quickly became absolutely crucial. That the moment when we're developing two tumors to create a frontal lobe, we're also putting holes in ourselves. And that these glorified holes pores, are actually the source of where our melanocytes are too, and that we absorb information that's too much for us there. And so when you think about what Jesus would see when he's seeing someone, he's looking at the smell coming out of their pores. He's seeing that. Why is he seeing that? Because he's comfortable knowing he lives in a world full of liars. He can compassionate this blind person and understand exactly what he's about. And that the way his brain does this is it hallucinates the color of aura around him. But we have learned to not see melon. Remember, the word was it was a terrifying shimmering. You can imagine if you were having to live around a terrifying shimmering all the time, you'd want to slowly get used to it. And then if you could get used to it, you'd just live a more relaxed life. You live a more relaxed life, you'd probably have sex more. If you had sex more, you'd probably have more kids. Which means that over time, we learn to ignore the very rainbow that was emanating from all of us. We learn, just like we learn to ignore our smell in order to survive, so too do we learn to ignore the fact that some of us are born glowing. That our skin is glowing. And we just wouldn't see that because it's the only way we could be comfortable is saying no one's glowing, no one is glowing, no one is. And so we get to this fourth son of Noah thing, which we already talked about last time, but this idea of the rumor in Ireland, his name is Bith. But it's not just there. There's others, even in the Quran. Similar, perhaps even stranger. The Quran notes that Noah had 4 sons. This is Surah 11, Hadri 4243. The unnamed 4th son refuses to come aboard the ark and instead climbs a mountain and is drowned. Think about the flood there. Some later Islamic commentators give his name as either Yam or Canaan, the latter the Arabic version of Canaan. It is difficult to determine the relationship between this rabbi and the Khan, though they may have shared the same source. In the case, is striking that the ancient tradition that was erased by P hundreds of years before the first millennium. Right? P was one of the sources of the Bible. It's like we cannot be having no hermaphrodites in here. We can't have it. And so we've ended up losing a lot of this history, which again, the Oracle mythology, I think a lot of this is the zygote story. That's why I think it's so right on, is that we're just tracing the zygote through time. The 4th son needs shin bones because he's not going on the ark. This is another interesting story that according to Armenian legends, Yontan, this is the 4th son, demands part of the relics of Adam which were kept in the ark. He receives the shin bones of the protoplast as his share. In other words, genetically, he wanted to continue, but he didn't want to continue in the same way. He didn't want to be a tumored Achilles heel guy. He wanted to be on Team Red, the Giants team. And this is the story of Ham, right? Ham was like, I don't want to have a tumor and run fast. I want to live for 600 years like you, Noah. And keep in mind, Noah was fooled. He got him drunk, and then he went in and diddled him. It shows you the simplistic nature of what it's like not to have a frontal lobe. That's why a lot of the time it's like, yeah, Adams didn't really have his shit together. Kind of was a pushover. It's a pushover because there's a cyclops. They're a cyclops because they don't have a frontal lobe. That frontal lobe, like I said before, you can smell truffles, but you can't detect a lie anymore. You can't read someone's aura. You're not going to think anyone's glowing around you because you've learned to depolarize all that information. And it's not just Noah. If you go back up from Lamech, Methuselah, remember we told you Lamech went to Methuselah and complained? Of course, Methuselah's dad was Enoch. That dude was fucking albino as can be. But Enoch's grandfather was Mahalalel. Which means the shining one of El. His name means the shining one of El. And shining one of El, there's that albino again. These guys are teeming with energy, with light. We're out of time, but I want to hit next time, if you'll join me on James True Live, I want to talk about cell regeneration. That the principle of growing body parts is actually a matter of controlling your chi. And that you can control the end of your finger right now. That's about it. but that the reason why frogs cannot do this and salamanders can is because of the ionic electrical memory of this system. This is some cool stuff. We'll get into Levin's work on that. Hope you're enjoying this series. Hope you're enjoying watching James True Live. I love bringing you a show. I appreciate all of you. Love to encourage you guys to hit thumbs up and maybe buy one of my books or join Patreon. We'll see you next time. Let me know what you think in the comments. It'd be great.